Stream Elements said, a dog door is now live. Streaming DCS World, 56 OG Practice, DCSS. A dog door on tube said test. A dog door on tube said test.
Go ahead and complete the cold start procedure we learned this morning. The cold start checklist is included in your kneeboard documentation, along with the mission card for this flight, which can be accessed with the assigned key binds. All flights from this point forward will include kneeboard documents with any relevant information you need, so you can always refer to either the mission briefing or your kneeboard as references. Until we complete the navigation check ride, though, I'll include visual cues for the process so you can get used to the order of things.
Roll left, roll left. Flight controls. Flight controls.
T-Rex. Clear to me what the ILS is. Veziani ILS. It's 108.75. box Deccan gives.
Awesome. Now that we're all ready to go, let's get our navigation set up. Using your preferred MDI, press the menu push button until you're on the support page, then press the HSI push button. On the right side, press the waypoint push button to activate waypoint navigation. Press the up arrow button to set waypoint 1, then press the sequence 1 push button to activate the flight plan. On the bottom left of the UFC, press the COM1 channel selector knob, then type in a frequency of 113.000 and press enter so you can monitor the frequency. You won't need to make any radio calls, as I'll be taking care of that on another channel, but we need to get you into the habit of setting up your comms. Slowly add throttle to get the aircraft moving and make a left turn onto the taxiway by using rudder controls. If the aircraft isn't turning fast enough, you can either reduce speed or hold down the nose while steering key bind to increase your turn rate on the ground. Take your time while moving down the taxiway. Make small throttle adjustments to keep your aircraft moving, while also making left and right rudder adjustments to keep your aircraft centered on the taxiway centerline. approaching the entrance to the active runway. Start slowing down using the brakes and follow the taxiway centerline as it curves toward the runway using the rudder controls. Bring the aircraft to a stop just before the runway threshold, marked by the horizontal white line. Come to a stop here. Double check that you've activated waypoint navigation on your HSI, that sequence 1 is activated, and that you've selected waypoint 1 as your active waypoint. The tower has already cleared us for takeoff, so look left and right down the runway to ensure that no aircraft are on the runway, as well as not on a final approach for landing. Then pull out onto the runway, turn to the right and try to place yourself right on the runway numbers, 07 in this case. We're ready for takeoff. Activate the brakes to hold the aircraft in position while advancing the throttle to full mill power. Once the aircraft's engines overcome the brakes and it begins moving forward, release the brakes and do your best to use the rudder to keep the aircraft centered on the runway centerline. At 80 knots, disable the nosewheel steering by using the appropriate keybind to reduce oversteering as we increase our speed. Assuming the takeoff trim has been set correctly, the aircraft will pitch up off the ground and begin climbing away from the runway. Once you confirm a positive rate of climb, raise the landing gear and flaps. Now that we're in the air, press the AP button on the UFC to display the autopilot menu, then press the CPL push button to activate the autopilot's course tracking function and verify that waypoint 2 is selected on the HSI. You can also have the aircraft automatically advance to the next waypoint once you reach it by pressing the auto button at the bottom right of the HSI. It won't box while the CPL function is on, so you'll have to switch that off for a moment to enable auto, or you can just manually advance waypoints with the up and down push buttons. Climb to an altitude of 10,000 feet, then activate the BALT push button to hold the aircraft at desired barometric altitude. Double check that your altimeter mode switch is set to baro. Maintain an airspeed of 350 knots and continue flying toward waypoint 2 and await further instruction. Once you're at 350 knots, you can set the auto throttle on the aircraft using the appropriate keybind, T, to keep it there. about a third of the way to Vaziani, and it's time to start thinking about how we're going to get this bird safely on the ground. Fortunately, the Hornet includes a feature that makes this incredibly easy. The Hornet is designed to land on aircraft carriers, which requires an extremely robust landing gear due to the fact that the aircraft needs to plant itself onto the carrier deck in order to catch the arresting wire and stop before it plunges off the side into the ocean. Because of this, the standard landing procedure does not require the flare typical of landing most other aircraft, so the Hornet pretty much just flies straight into the ground to land safely, assuming you have the aircraft at the proper angle and speed. To ensure that the aircraft is at the correct angle and speed, a new indication will appear on the HUD called the E-bracket once the landing gear is lowered. As the name suggests, it's a large E-shaped icon that appears on the left side of the HUD when the aircraft is configured for landing. To get you familiarized with the proper use of the E-bracket, let's disable the B-alt on the autopilot, slow down to less than 250 knots, then drop the landing gear and lower the flaps to full. Do your best to control the aircraft as the surfaces change, holding an altitude of about 10,000 feet and reducing your airspeed to about 170 knots. As the aircraft settles down, begin making small throttle and pitch trim adjustments to keep the speed at about 170 knots and the velocity vector aligned with the horizon indicator on the HUD. Once you're in the correct configuration and settled, press the I/P button at the top left of the UFC to signal me that you're ready for further instruction. Now that we're configured for landing, you should see the E-bracket on the HUD. The movement of the E-bracket is primarily controlled with the throttle, though the actual way it works is a bit more complicated than that. For now, let's just assume that more throttle moves the E-bracket up, and less throttle moves it down. The E-bracket is meant to be used in conjunction with the velocity vector to get your aircraft at the proper angle of attack for a landing. To do this, first start by ensuring that your velocity vector is on the horizon to prevent loss of altitude, then slowly pull back on the throttle to bring the E-bracket down toward the horizon. As you do so, start slowly adding small amounts of nose-up pitch trim to keep the velocity vector locked to the horizon. The idea is to keep the velocity vector as stationary as possible with trim and bring the E-bracket down to it with the throttle. Avoid using the stick to make pitch inputs, as we need to get the aircraft trimmed properly so it stays at the proper angle by itself, and the stick doesn't do that. Once the E-bracket comes down to the velocity vector, your aircraft is set to the proper angle of attack for landing. Ideally, you want the velocity vector lined up as closely as possible to the middle mark of the E-bracket, but as long as it's within the upper and lower bounds of the bracket, you're fine. Take some time to get used to this idea, because we'll be doing this again when we approach Vatsiani. Once you're comfortable with how it works, press the I/P button to let me know you're all set. Okay, hopefully you've mastered controlling the E-bracket and velocity vector by this point. It's time to get to the airfield, but we're not going to get there very quickly in this configuration. Let's raise the flaps and landing gear, and throttle up to around 350 knots. Get back to 10,000 feet of altitude if you're not there already and continue on to waypoint 3. Don't forget to reset your autopilot, unless you just want to fly manually.
Bingo. Bingo.
We're pretty close to Vaziani now, and the autopilot should be turning the aircraft to the right to line up with the runway. Once the aircraft levels out, turn off the autopilot, reduce speed to less than 250 knots, then lower the landing gear and flaps. This time, though, allow the aircraft to begin a slow descent toward the runway. Once the aircraft settles down, adjust speed to about 130 knots. The speed is slower this time because we're actually landing. Once this is done, make small throttle and pitch trim adjustments to bring the E-bracket down to the velocity vector, then keep both placed on the end of the runway. Use the stick to make left or right adjustments to align yourself with the runway, but be sure not to make any pitch changes with it. Remember, when the E-bracket and velocity vector are paired, pitch is controlled with the throttle only. Resist the temptation to use the stick if the velocity vector slides up or down. Just add or remove throttle as required.
Bingo.
Continue flying in this manner until the aircraft touches down on the runway. As you get closer, place the velocity vector right on the runway numbers and prepare for a jolt.
Bingo. 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 Bingo.
Okchina, Colt 1, inbound.
Bingo. Bingo.
Colt 1, inbound.
Altitude. Altitude. Bingo. 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 Bingo.
Chonkontwich said, OMW.
Okay, you doing, brother?
Bingo. Bingo.
Touchdown. Use the brakes and speed brakes to slow the aircraft down until you can make a safe turn off the runway to one of the taxiway entrances to the left.
Bingo. Bingo.
Are you coming off?
I'm just doing single
Taxi
player
over to
missions at the
parking
moment.
spot 1. You can locate it by accessing the F10 map and referencing it to your current location.
Bingo.
Once there, execute the shutdown procedure. The lesson will be complete once the aircraft is parked in spot 1 and completely shut down.
Wow. Let's see if the park spot. Wow. What the hell is that?
Bingo. Bingo.
Don't break the gear.
Oh, I thought you were in the Marianas training server.
Negative. Negative. Just, practicing some navigation. Quite sure where he wants me to park, though.
Bingo. 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 Bingo.
I'm passed off, DCS keeps crashing on Faces of Death. I'm very displeased.
That's disappointing.
Bingo. Bingo.
Say, can be quite frustrating, DCS. Okay. What did he say to do? Text the time spot 1. F10 map, rest your current location. F10
I'd quad
map.
settings to change.
Yeah. What sort of frames are you getting?
$50 to $60.
Bingo. Bingo.
Yeah, that's fine. Parking spot 1 would be all the way up the other end of the runway. I need to really go back up the taxiway.
Bingo. Bingo.
Then all those just going on the grass.
Bingo. Bingo.
It's hard to know what might be causing that. What's your rig?
Bingo. Bingo.
Be pleased to have pulled this off. Last time I couldn't make head nor tail of what to do.
Like VR? I'm on a single Manito.
No, I mean, you know, graphics card, CPU, etc. Oh.
Bingo. Bingo.
If you're using the Eagle Dynamics version of the software, it might be worth running a repair on it. Steam, try verify
Oh,
files.
3060 i5, 64 gig of RAM, 6 TB SATA and a 512 GB. I'm on Ed version.
Yeah, maybe run the
Bingo.
repair. I know there's a way to flush your textures, that can help as well. Could be a gazillion different things causing it though, unfortunately.
Where do I find that?
I run Steam, but I'm pretty sure it's
Bingo.
in
Bingo.
the menu when you boot it. There should be run repair, or just do a quick Google on how to repair Eagle Dynamics DCS. I know I was chatting with Jimmy. Chaos recommended that as a pathway when we were dialing in some settings the other day.
Bingo. Bingo.
Oh, okay, let me relaunch game.
Yeah, your rig.
I
should-
run like 5 other apps plus DCS too.
Bingo. Bingo.
What apps?
Bingo. Bingo.
I see, clean up, and repair build, what should I do?
Tune up and repair build. I'd do exactly that. Are there two? I've not used. I don't run Eagle Dynamics, so but I know there's a repair option, so I would do repair build clean up. Probably both. I don't think there's any harm in doing that. What it should do is clear your cache, get rid of textures, and on the next load it might take a bit longer because it'll have to refresh everything. But it may or may not help.
I've clicked repair build first, not clean up yet.
Parking spot 1. When it's at
Bingo.
home.
Bingo.
This one, apparently.
I load, fly for 10 minutes, and as I take off, boom, I freeze and crash.
That's frustrating.
Bingo. Bingo.
And it could be a memory leak. What are your other apps?
Highly. Pardon?
What other applications are you running? You said you're running five other things?
Bingo.
I'm in spot 1. Look at about 10. Once they execute the shutdown procedure, this is complete.
Oh yeah, OpenTrack, iTrack, SRS, maybe Microsoft Edge, Discord.
None of that should cause it.
Nah, nothing to power hungry.
No. You should be perfectly fine with that. And I click on anything. Yeah. What's going on?
Bingo. Bingo. Flight controls. Flight controls.
My specs aren't too bad either, so I don't know why it's struggling.
Yeah, it's a bit of a mystery. Gotta switch this thing off.
Bingo. 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 Bingo.
I tweaked my settings, maybe should help. I turned my preload radius down from max to around 60 to 80.
Okay.
Chief, place the wheel chocks.
Anyway, thanks for letting me pick your brain. Good to see you.
Yeah, you're welcome. I hope you hope you can sort it out. I mean, failing that, I think dialing settings down and perhaps running a something to monitor CPU and GPU use while you're flying might help. Message history. There was 1.1 seconds. Parking spot one completely shut down. What the hell?
Yeah, thanks. Me too. See you around.
Yes. Bye. I don't know what I'm missing. Hey Google, play the next track.
Great work getting through the navigation block of the training. Now that we know how to get where we're going, it's time to get to the fun part. A couple of notes to start with. First, you won't have to enter waypoints anymore, as you've proven you know how, and it's faster to just have them loaded to begin with. Second, in the same spirit, we'll start the missions with the aircraft turned on and ready to go, so no more startups required. As satisfying as it is to drop bombs on targets, the ability to do so is useless if we're unable to get to the target area. Situational awareness is a critical component of flying the Hornet, primarily because even if there are no enemy fighters in the air to attack you, you're not necessarily safe. Most targets worthy of bombing will likely have some kind of air defense intended to shoot down attacking aircraft. For this flight, we're going to learn the first part of detecting and evading air defenses, then RTB, and practice our Case 1 recovery. Before we can do any of that, though, we need to get some ordnance on the aircraft. While many missions will have your aircraft pre-equipped with the recommended loadout, others will not, so it's important for you to become familiar with the refuel/rearm interface so you can ensure you're properly armed for each mission. This is the ordnance page where we can set up our aircraft for the mission. The right side of the screen allows you to set up fuel, gun ammo, and chaff/flare quantities, as well as preset ordnance loadouts and liveries for the Hornet. On the left under the image of the aircraft is where you can manually select weapons for each station, which is numbered from right to left. Each station has certain weapons or equipment that can be loaded. Stations 1 and 9 are on the wingtips and are for missiles, usually AIM-9X Sidewinder short-range, heat-seeking missiles. These are great for taking out aircraft within visual range such as helicopters or enemy fighters who wander too close. Stations 2 through 8 can all be equipped with bombs, missiles, or external fuel tanks as desired, though there are typical use cases.
Request rearming.
Stations 3, 5, and 7 are usually where external fuel tanks will be mounted when required, though they can be equipped with various weapons as well. External fuel tanks can be dropped to significantly decrease aircraft weight and drag in an emergency. For missions requiring maximum ordnance, you may only have a single external tank in Station 3 to free up the other two for weapons. Stations 2, 3, 7, and 8 are generally for bombs, whether single heavy bombs or pods with clusters of bombs attached. Station 4 is typically reserved for the at-FLIR targeting pod, as it's the only station where this can be equipped. While this station can certainly be equipped with weapons, having an at-FLIR pod equipped generally provides far more value than one more bomb or missile. Station 6 can be used for bombs, but is typically reserved for a single AIM-120 Advanced Medium Range Air-to-Air (AMRAAM) radar-guided missile, usually for the rare situation where you're surprised by an enemy fighter that wasn't supposed to be there. For this mission, we have 2 trucks to take out, which only require light weaponry to destroy. Since we spent all that time learning how to enter GPS coordinates in the last part of the course, we already know how to set up precision bombing via coordinates. Go ahead and equip Stations 3 and 7 with GBU-38, 500-pound, GPS-guided bombs by right-clicking them and going to Bomb, GBU-38. Leave the center fuel tank equipped. Once you're configured, press the OK button to instruct the ground crew to change your loadout. Once you're told rearming is complete, press IP to continue.
Request refueling. Request rearming.
Refueling complete. Rearming complete.
We have the weapons loaded, but by default they're in an unusable condition to prevent accidents. We're going to need to configure the weapons so that they're active and ready to drop, and it's usually better to do it here on the ground than while we're up in the air trying to get ourselves on target. Weapon configuration is accomplished from the stores page, which can be accessed from the TAC menu on the MDI. You can get there manually with the menu, or you can simply press the air to ground AG mode button on the left side of the cockpit. The stores page will automatically pop up on the left. Incidentally, you'll need to be in air to ground mode to release your weapon, so get used to pressing that button. Select the J82 push button along the top to select the weapon, which will box it. A timer will appear on the screen, which is an indicator that the weapon is being aligned for use. Once it reaches 7:30, it will be good enough for government work. A full perfect alignment can take up to 10 minutes. Be advised that if you deselect the weapon, the countdown will stop and you'll have to start over before you can use it. This is important to remember because you'll always need to be sure to have plenty of time for the weapon to align before using it. The alignment will continue even if you select other weapons, but be sure to not specifically deselect the weapon or it will shut down and the alignment process will have to restart. The first thing we need to do is be sure we arm all the warhead fuses. Dropping bombs that don't explode sort of defeats the purpose, so we're going to use the only option available for this device, the E-fuse. Press the push button for it and select instant. Setting up our first target is extremely easy, so let's do that now. The station you currently have selected will be boxed, and you can switch between them using the step function. If you're not already, step over to Station 7, the right station, then press the mode button to put it in target of opportunity, TOO, mode. Once that's done, on another MDI, select the HSI page, then advance to Waypoint 2 and press the Waypoint Designate, WPDSG, button to assign Waypoint 2 as the weapon's target. That's it, just a couple of button presses and it's done. Of course, you'll almost always have additional targets nearby your assigned target waypoint, so we'll need to be able to take care of them as well. This is where the GPS data entry we practiced comes in. Step to Station 3 and verify it's in pre-planned, PP, mode, then press the JDAM display button on the top right. To the left will appear the release type button, which provides options for the different weapon release types. Select manual, and then look for the mission button above it. At the top of this screen, you'll see 5 options which correspond to separate mission profiles you can program into the computer. In general, you're only going to use one, but just be aware that these profiles provide you with extensive flexibility. For now, just press the TGTUFC button to enter the target coordinates for the weapon.
the man, but left type button. Versions 34 minutes. Okay, so well type. And it's the emphasis of the screen. It's the phone. UGT UFC button. What's that? Eight back. Go outside, sweetheart.
The data entry is a bit different for this particular application. As you can see, there are 3 options that appear, 2 you should recognize and a third you won't. We can ignore the uppermost option for now. Tap the position button so we can get the coordinates put in. Again, this will be slightly different from entering a waypoint. You have to manually choose latitude or longitude, then enter the coordinate in as usual. Go ahead and press the LAT button, then enter the latitude provided in the briefing. Then do the same for long. The decimal screen shows up blank for this one, but just enter everything in the way you were trained. Once the coordinates are in, go back to the stores page and tap the TGT UFC button twice to return to the UFC menu, then tap the elevation option and enter it as normal. Once all that's done, step through the two
Happy, come on.
Yeah, Annunciators, avionics, anti-skid, overspeed, windshield temperature, thrust reverser, stick shaker, battery temp, landing gear, and fire warning. To test all those systems.
Good
And
morning.
you gotta say out loud what you're looking for each one whenever you're in the sim pit.
Yeah, that makes sense. Wow.
We have it's pretty cool. It's got a AOA indicator up top, so that's pretty fun to look at.
An indicator, like
Yeah, like the Hornet has.
like the light?
Yeah.
Do they work like the Hornet, or do they work like the Air Force version?
I don't know how the Air Force version works.
It's smarter than the Hornet.
Okay, well that doesn't tell me how it works.
So, the Air Force version, the dot in the middle is green. Or no, sorry. Yeah, the dot in the middle is green. And if you're slow, it's a red chevron pointing down, basically telling you to push the nose down. And if you're fast, it's a yellow chevron pointing up, telling you should bring the nose up to slow down.
Ooh, I think it's like the Air Force then.
It makes way more sense than the Navy version.
I don't use it. We have the AOA indexer, and then we also have the angle of attack instrument gauge. It gives us the LD max, and then the best glide, and then obviously critical angle of attack for stall. It is actually very nice.
Oh yeah, gauge would be really nice. How many memory items do we have in the 220?
5.
4.
Oh, nice.
And 2 of them are the same. With like minor change. 2 of them are putting the oxygen mask on. One's cabin pressure loss and one's smoke and fumes. So really, those are almost the same. The other one is if the primary flight computers like fail, which basically you just turn off the autopilot and fly. And then the 4th one is a dual engine failure, and the step is just to confirm that the ram air turbine is extended. You don't even have to push a button. You just look up and confirm that it's automatically deployed. So it's like 4 extremely easy. Like extremely minor memory items.
I think the V1 cuts are the hardest for me to do, because especially single pilot, because not only do you have to look at your speed tape, but you also have to catch enunciators at the corner of your eye if any come on, and V1 and V2, or not V1, V1 and VR happen like almost instantly together, and yeah,
Bingo.
they're like, you should have caught it. Like, what? What do you mean? It's like, by the time I got to V1, VR was right there. Like, you're not giving me any kind of human reaction time, you know?
Well, and V1 cut single pilot are already difficult enough because, like, it's not like you're in the probably the most busiest and mentally demanding phase of flight, right?
Bingo.
Allow.
Oh yeah.
So, accelerating down the runway while trying to manage, you know, everything. Eyes outside to stay on center line while you're, you know, just, there's so much shit going on there.
Yeah, we normally do like an 80 knot cross check where we glance across the panels, and that's where they normally set the V1 cuts at. It's normally around 80 knots, but there's that simism where
Like,
stop it doesn't come on until like right below V1, and then by the time you catch it after your cross check, because your eyes glance across the annunciator panel and across the engine instruments, and then you're back on the center line and airspeed tape, and you either catch the directional control loss, or you catch a glimpse of a light at the corner of your eye, and hope to God you abort and pull it back before you cross V1.
And what? It's like a 4 to 6 second human response time if you're not ready for it.
Yeah, like 2.5 seconds. You know, is normal reaction time, I guess. 2.5 to 3 seconds.
Well, yeah, that's because you're expecting it.
Right. Yeah.
I think like normal human response time without being in a sim and knowing it's going to happen, it's like 4 to 6 seconds.
Right. Yeah, and like I said, by the time because usually V1 and VR are within 10 knots of each other, and by the time you hit V1, you're at VR. So, like, if anything, usually when I do a pre-takeoff briefing, it's like anything below 80 knots, any lights or enunciators.
Testing 1, testing 2.
Loss of directional control or enunciators will abort. Anything over V1 will just take to the sky and resolve there. I'm normally like, just if we cross 80 and we don't catch it by the time we get to V1, we'll just take it to the sky, because an engine failure at V1, or a couple of knots below V1, you're pretty much going to the sky with it anyways, because you're not going to catch it in time, especially on shorter runways. If you're not taking off on a 8 to 12,000 foot runway, you know what I mean? You're not going to have enough braking power to come to a complete stop.
Yeah, you're probably going off the end.
Yeah, exactly. And
yeah, but at least you're mentally prepared for it. Like, you've thought this out to know, because that's what really gets pilots in trouble, is when shit happens and they weren't mentally prepared.
Yeah.
They hesitate, or they think about it for an extra 2 or 3 seconds and question their decision, and then they're off the end of the runway.
Right. And a lot of the time, we're taking off from shorter runways anyways. Anything between 4 to 5,500 feet is normally where we're landing at, unless we're going to like busier airports like Tampa or Miami or something like that. Valdosta has a 8,000 foot runway, so it's kind of nice to have that room to abort, because we're normally off the ground within 3,000 feet anyways. So that's if we don't do a rolling takeoff. But in Valdosta, we have that time to abort and come to a complete stop. But anywhere else, it's just like, if we don't lose directional control, we're taking it to the sky. There's no aborting.
Yeah. Well, gentlemen, have a nice day. Enjoy your sim flying. I'm at the airport, so I gotta go.
All right, man. Fly safe.
Yeah.
Fly safe.
Have a good one.
All right, have fun. Have a good trip.
Fly safe, Mr. Muffins.
Ooh, you got nice. You got air support out. Are there any missions? Ground crew.
At the moment, I'm not sure if there are. I'm trying to work on waypoint 4.
Yeah, I'm gonna come help you. Nope, there are no missions. I killed what's his nuts, the second-hand man yesterday.
Yeah, the red is reinforcing waypoint 4 at the moment.
Sounds about right. I've got one long stick, so I can kind of help out there, but I'm bringing 8 JDAMs.
Okay. I was
Okay.
going to take a hog loaded to bear. I guess if you're working on targets, I could actually.
Where's 6-9? Come on.
Marshall 169, marking mops 17043, Angels 2, state 6.9.
flaps. Yeah, or too high. Staple down.
One 6-9, Portable 6.6.
Too low. It bounced.